Hello, my name is Jamie Freeland. I'm the teacher here at Roberts Academy. I teach mathematics, middle grades. I did my action research thesis on using ASL signs in geometric instruction. And I have the question up here, and you can read it there if you'd like. So let me give you some background information. So when you look at any type of content in any subject matter, like English, science, mathematics, civics, history, anything else like that, you need to know the vocabulary words, the keywords for that thing that you're learning within that subject. So students have a hard time remembering a lot of times what the keywords are and how it connects to the subject that they're learning. But it doesn't only affect them there, but here, especially at this school, we have students who struggle with reading and writing. They have dyslexia. So a lot of times in mathematics, when they're reading a problem or a set of instructions to do the problem, sometimes those keywords would help them kind of maybe remind them of what they're doing. So maybe connecting them to the keywords or the mathematical language of what it is that they're reading might spark within them a way to overcome that hill in order to solve those problems. Otherwise, they just frustration gets the best of them, and they haven't even started solving the problem, and that's an issue. So the good thing is here at Roberts Academy we have utilized the Orton-Gillingham approach to reading and writing. The problem is there's nothing like that for math. Really, the only thing that I've seen so far up to this point is the multisensory approach, which is a great approach, by the way. But I've kind of used that approach with the sign language. So first, what I like to do is just quickly talk about how teaching and learning needs to be transformational. If it's not transformational, you're not going to get to the heart of why we're here, of why the student is here. Secondly, teaching math is best when it's utilizing the multisensory approach, what I just said earlier. And in this case, we're going to be using sign language to do that. So it helps them with their preferred learning style. Some people are better with kinesthetic. Some are better with the auditorial, the visual, the doing is the kinesthetic, of course. But with sign language, it kind of takes the kinesthetic and the visual and it combines those two. And if we do those concurrently with saying those words, then you have all three. And so that's important. I'm going to be talking about that here in a second. Next is, so real quick, it has to be transformational. Being a teacher doesn't mean we just focus on what we teach, but we have to focus on who we teach. We're not just focusing on the content of what we're teaching, we're focusing on the student. Because the student comes with attitudes and beliefs. They bring that to the class, and so sometimes you have to address those things. You have to maneuver a way around them to get to the student. In some ways, you got to be able to say, hey, I respect you, I understand where you're coming from, and I understand these are your set of experiences, and this is kind of where we're at. And you're trying to help create a bridge between the two. So again, they are the center of why we are here as teachers. If it wasn't for the students, we wouldn't be teaching. So teaching's great, but if they're not learning, teaching's not happening. Roseborough and Leverett say that the four most important strategies in their book, Transformational Teaching in the Information Age, making why and how we teach relevant to the students, they say this, that number one, you should be teaching for learning. 2, know how the students learn. 3, teach students how to learn. And 4, teach by asking questions. And so in this action research, I focused really on how they learn using the preferred style of learning, or preferred learning style, I should say. So again, I've talked about that many students learn by watching, hearing, doing. So that's kind of the approach I'm taking. I'm kind of doing that approach with sign language. So it's multisensory. Like I said, it's visual, it's kinesthetic. And if sign is employed concurrently with speech, then the auditorial aspect can help kind of bring it all together. Learning is not one-dimensional. It's not just simply just reading or even listening. It's not even two-dimensional. It's three-dimensional. Really, to get really at the heart of what you're trying to do is you're trying to give the student more of an opportunity to learn. And if you can hit various different aspects multidimensional, if you will, you'll do great as a teacher. So that's kind of what I had. I had that, like the length, the width, the height. So three-dimensional. So it's got your eyes, the doing, and the hearing. So just kind of playing on my geometry here. So the purpose of my study. So this video, this picture here, I don't know if you can see it. This is actually by a movie that's done. I think it's on Apple, if I'm not mistaken. It's about a girl who's playing, who's singing, and she loves music. She loves music, but her parents are deaf, and her family's deaf, and they don't really have a big appreciation for what she's doing. They're there to support her, of course, but they don't quite sure why she wants to go in this direction. And she feels caught because she grew up with sign language. She grew up in a deaf world, and she's not sure exactly how to explain to her parents why this means so much to her. So this was pretty cool. I haven't seen the video, but I know all about it in a sense because I lived that experience. I'm a coder as well. Both my parents are deaf. And so this kind of brings the heart of the purpose of why I do this. Growing up, I was delayed in my reading and writing. Even though I could hear, English was not my mode of communication. So I learned to express myself through signing. And as a student myself, learning mathematics, it was not easy for me just to simply read problems out of a book, listen, and read. I had to basically interpret everything either mentally, I had to sign it in my mind, or sign it out in front of me, kind of like self-cueing. And so I experienced that of hearing myself, seeing my signs, and experiencing it. It basically made the math come alive to me. And later on, and many years later, as a teacher teaching mathematics, because I was pretty good at it growing up, I realized that students, I would speak with my hands as I'm doing right now. And sometimes I thought, well, maybe that's a distraction to some of these kids. But come to find out, it wasn't. It was actually something that actually excited them. And so when I taught them a few signs with some of these concepts, they really took hold and say, hey, this is pretty interesting. And so that's kind of the reason why I kind of went in this direction with the study. With those two experiences, with personal experiences and experiences as a teacher, I kind of said, you know what, if I can learn it, they could too. So that's kind of why I chose to study. So this is a mixed method. I'm focusing on the qualitative and the quantitative. The quantitative is going to be done on weekly weekly quizzes, and I'm going to compare those with the control groups, and that's pretty standard. The qualitative part to this is I'm comparing how students respond on their exit slips that they're given every single day. They do the problem, they write, there's 4 choices they have based on the level of confidence they have for their answer. The top one is, I got this, you know. The second one is, I think I got this. The third one is, I'm not sure I got this. So there's quite a bit of ambivalence in there. And then the fourth one is, I don't got this, okay? So it's along those lines. And so what students would do is they would fill out these problems at the end of the lesson. You know, again, these are exit slips. And they would put them in the folders of what they felt. And so what I did was I tracked them, and I just basically put a number from 1 to 4, 1 being the most confident to 4 being the least confident in their answer. And so I'll show that to you here in the next few slides. So I'm comparing qualitative data against themselves. So I'm kind of showing how the trend's working throughout the 6 weeks of the study. Okay, so here is kind of what I saw in 6th grade. You can see there's the first week here, the second week, the third week, the 4th week, 5th week, and the 6th week. And all 3 grade levels are that way. So you can see in 6th grade, it starts out, 2.25, which is pretty good. 1 being the most confident and 4 being the least confident. The lowest they get really in the whole 6 weeks for 6th grade is 2.5 is the lowest they go. So they feel pretty confident in their answers. So I felt like maybe sign language helped give them a little boost of confidence. And you can kind of see as they approach the end of the week towards the quiz, their confidence just seems to build and build and build. And they do really well on the quiz. Here they do actually 2 points above the control group as compared. And we'll look at that in a second. And you can kind of see that. So as it goes towards the end of the week, it typically builds. Now on this one, it kind of drops down a little bit. It builds up here to this quiz. Here, it kind of goes back up and down, but it does fall down on this one. Interesting, but they still made some improvements as compared to the control group. And here, this 5th week, it kind of goes back and forth. And this last one, it goes up. But that's basically what you see in 6th grade. And we're going to talk about some of those things where it really improved the most and kind of what those areas were. 7th grade, quantitative results before we get to 7th grade. Basically, you can see the most improvements were in the 3rd week. So this is when we're talking about area of composite figures. So how we would have like, sometimes you'd have like the square and maybe a half circle, or maybe you had the square and a triangle. So a lot of times we would sign the shapes and sign the other shape with the other hand, so they can see both shapes in conjunction to each other and how they're connected. So a lot of times we just sign different shapes, trapezoid, sometimes you can do symmetrical 2 hands. Sometimes you just do the 1 hand. If it's truly symmetrical, you can do it with both hands. They mirror each other, just like that. Equilateral triangle, stuff like that. So we did a lot of those signings and to show composite figures. They did 16% better than their counterpart, their control group. That was amazing. That was amazing. And you can see pretty much all 5 weeks they did pretty good. But significantly, statistically, I would say significantly was the first 3 weeks. They really did well on area of parallelograms, triangles, area of trapezoids, and area of composite figures. And that's 6th grade. All right, let's take a look at 7th grade. 7th grade, same thing. You can kind of see it kind of goes up, down in the level of confidence, but towards the end in the quiz, it does go up a little bit. Same thing here, kind of goes up and down a little bit, but on this one, the quiz goes down. Their level of confidence actually drops down to 2.46, which again is not that bad on a scale of 1 to 4. That's pretty good. But still, though, it kind of made me wonder a little bit, why did it drop down towards the end of the quiz, towards the end of the week, which the quiz was. Could be a lot of different explanations for that. And then for this one, same thing. This one actually increases, drops down a little bit in the middle of the week, and then comes back up. So again, this one kind of goes down a little bit. And so significantly on the 4th week, they're about tied with the control group here. And then the last 2 weeks of the study for 7th grade, we didn't do any geometry. I actually had overlapped some of my geometrical instructions with 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. 6th and 8th grade, pretty much the whole 6 weeks was geometry. But for 7th grade, we had to continue. I couldn't continue doing geometrical instruction because we have already started a little bit earlier before the study in geometry with 7th grade. So we had run its course basically on week 4. So you can see basically with random bias samples and box and whisker plots, which are both statistics, basically statistically they weren't different than the control group. So you can see that they're about the same, and we did no sign language whatsoever on those 2 weeks. So that kind of shows you how that's different than the rest of the data. And let's take a look at the quantitative data. So the quantitative data, the first 3 weeks, they did pretty good. I would say it's quite significant. We had talked about circumference and areas of a circle. So we did like a circumference, radius, or circumference, diameter. We talked about area. We talked about how to create, same thing in 6th grade, area of composite figures. That did pretty well in 7th grade too, not only in 6th grade. And then the last is we talked about surface area, about how a 3-dimensional, kind of like a box, you had the top, the bottom, so you had the sides, you had the front, the back. We would do this, top, bottom, or sometimes I'd say top, and I would do sign bottom, and we talk about the different sides. If we talked about a square pyramid, I would show the lateral sides and go, okay, you have square pyramid, square base, and the sides are lateral. And so I would sign those, and they would sign them back to me, and they did pretty good, you can see. Now the last 3 weeks, not significantly different, even though it's in the red. They're basically about the same. Volume, we only signed one word for volume. It's just because there wasn't a lot of ability to sign a lot of things, so I just did volume like this. So, and that basically, we'll talk more about that at the end of the slides here. Okay, 8th grade, same thing. When it gets to the end of the week, towards the quiz, the confidence seems to go up. Here it goes up a little bit, goes up here. Here it actually drops down on dilations for 8th grade. For this one on volume of cylinders, actually pretty good. And on volume of cones and spheres, it does come back up a little bit. Okay, so you can see how the confidence kind of waxes and wanes over time, but it seems like sign language is helping kind of instill a little bit of confidence in their ability to answer some of these questions. Okay, the quantitative data, the most significant out of all this that I've noticed was, and surprisingly to me, was the algebraic representations of the coordinate plane. I think what happened was over time we had built upon that translations, reflections, rotations, and as we were building at the end with the algebraic representations, I started assigning all the numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I talked about maybe the X, the Y, the algebraic representation, how that was, you had the coefficient, you had the letter, you had the constant, right? The coefficient or the 3, like the X, 3X. And so we'd talk about that a lot. And somehow that was 12% better than the control group. So that was quite amazing. So here's kind of my conclusion. Looking at it collectively, I've noticed that when we just focus on one sign, it didn't really make a big difference. When we sign multiple signs, multiple things, and they kind of connected to one another, like a line of thought, it seemed to do a lot better. So as an example, volume of cylinder. So volume of cylinder is area of the base, which is a circle. So the area of the base times the height. So sometimes we would say, okay, the area of the base and the cylinder, so it has the same base on top. So area base times the height. And so they can kind of see that. That's just an example of what we would do. But when I did signs like that, signs that would lead, kind of sign on top of each other, like area of base, how would you do that? You'd find the radius, right? So pi times radius times the height. And so I'd show them that and they would sign it back to me. And so it just seems like we were like having little cans in our hands. But it made sense. It kind of made sense to them anyways. And also what I noticed was when I used a lot of numbers, when I fingerspelled numbers, when I actually signed the numbers, it made sense. For some reason, it helped a lot. So various shapes, numbers, composite figures, volume of cylinders, it worked. It worked. It was awesome. So it just seemed like students were excited to learn some of these signs. And I think that partly helped in all of this. So I can't discount that at all. My action plan is to do this again next year, but maybe even expand a little bit. Do maybe some signs on YouTube. Have them do that at home. Have them view that at home. Maybe even create these lenticular cards where if you move the card, you move the paper, the shape moves, right? So you've got that 3D image that moves in the card. So create signs in cards like that so they can see it move. So they don't have to have actual technology. They can just use what we call print technology to see that and to take that home. So, and long-term plan, obviously, beyond that would be how can science help us learn different subject matters? So, such as history, science, because there's science for everything. And you'll see that in my review, my literature review. I talk about how signs were used by Native Americans between different Indian tribes, or I should Native American tribes. And it was just amazing how they would concurrently sign with their speech and all of that. So anyways, that's all I've got. I hope you enjoyed it. And God bless. And let me know what you think. All right. Bye-bye.